Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this interesting session about a new feature to our CX 10,000 security first industry leading DPU based switch. My name is Aniruddha Jasu, and I'm the TME for switching team. I would be covering this new feature called as strict firewall mode. So, what is this feature? Well, um, we have been using the switch for switching routing purposes. We have been using the DPU on the switch for security policies and other policies in place. With this new feature, we are ensuring that we can also fulfill the requirement of strict firewalling. And the strict firewall mode is that this mode is not enabled by default for the obvious reasons, and it applies to the IPv4 and IPv6 unicast traffic only, right? It can be enabled on the CX box using the CX CLI, the REST-based config, which is pretty simple and straightforward. I will show that to you. This is a CX feature and not directly DPU-based, meaning strict firewalling and strict bypassing. You have the options to do both, is happening at non-DPU ASIC. You can choose to have certain VRF, certain V to strict bypass, meaning not let them redirect to the DPU and allow for communication. This can be done beforehand to globally enabling the firewall, which is interesting because you can use this in the brownfield scenario and it is easily acceptable. The existing setup wouldn't change. You can introduce whatever policies, bypassing you want, and then introduce the firewall feature set so that the existing traffic do not hamper. Minded that the multicast and the CPU directed traffic is not subjected to strict mode controls. It's just the IPv4, IPv6 unicast traffic, meaning what? The routing protocols working on the switch environment wouldn't get affected, and whatever is destined to the switch wouldn't be part of the entire strict mode control. It's just the traffic which is passing through, switched, routed, is what we are keeping it in the strict firewall mode and scenario. So multicast and CPU based are not. Also, you should know that the route only ports, the routed ports, sub interfaces, and the management VRF are not subject to this strict mode and are always in bypass mode. What does bypass mean? We are saying that the strict bypass, whatever traffic you do not want to be firewalled, you are bypassing them at the non-DPU ASIC itself. You're not sending it anywhere. You want those traffic to be unaffected for firewalling. So those you can choose. And by default, these are always in bypass mode. You don't have control on that. The leaf and the L3 AG profiles, there are 4 profile on CX10K. The leaf and the L3 AG profile strict mode operates at the VLAN level, and the L3 core and spine profile strictly operates at the VRF level. So basically, you have to understand where the switch is positioned in the environment and what profiling has been used. For example, the leaf mode, the border leaf mode, they have 2 different functionality. They have 2 different profiling, and the way the strict firewall would work depends upon the type of profile you have set. But the concept remains the same. You are firewalling, basically. It's just a matter how it does. It does that at the VRF level in these 2. It does on the VLAN level. So you have to configure it on all the VLANs. If you're configuring it on the VRF and you want it to be on VLAN, you have to do it on the VLAN as well. It's that simple. And reboot isn't required to switch between the strict firewall mode. That is, if you enable or disable, there is no need for reboot. The software is this. In this, you have the feature. The PSM relevant PSM version should be this, and the AFC should be on 7.2.2 for it to work. There are various use cases. Since it's a firewall feature, it comes in under zero trust environment. Wherever there is zero trust environment, you see we are going ahead in this direction everywhere, and it is required, it is expected. Highly regulated environments such as finance, healthcare, government workloads often require explicit whitelisting of allowed communication, and this can place well there and ensures tenant isolation. Although you can do leaking and all that today, but this makes sure that there is no such loopholes because everything is denied unless you bypass it, unless you redirect it to the DPU. So it's in your control, is what we are trying to say. Customer benefits, it aligns with the zero trust principles, which we are claiming and we are, you know, saying it. It reduces shadow traffic. There may be many things which may be happening and you do not necessarily have to track everything. Now the switch firewalling within, if you enable that mode, would do it, right? Obviously, there are a lot of things which you may not know and it is still hitting the switch or passing through the switch. Forces consistent, auditable, and deliberate policy creation. So it's like a routine. It's one-time thing, let's say, because that's what you're doing in the general firewall as well. So the command is pretty straightforward. It's just one single global configuration to make sure you have the strict firewall piece on the switch box. So basically, it supports on both the VSX and non-VSX environment, and there is a sync. So if you do it on the primary, it would sync it on the secondary, and you do it on system firewall mode strict, and that's it. This ensures that the switch has now become this firewall, which I've highlighted in green. And you can also say no system firewall mode strict. And to see the status of the firewall, straightforward command, show DSM firewall, it will show you the list, whether it is enabled, which are the traffic which are bypassed, which are the traffic which are dropped at VLAN and VRF level. So to enable bypassing, that means if you do not want certain traffic in a VLAN, for certain VLANs, you do not want that to be strict firewalled, you can choose that going under the VLAN context firewall mode strict bypass, or getting to the VRF, which usually you would do in a L3 core and spine profiling, firewall mode strict bypass. Okay, supported platform on this release is CX 10,000. Little more detail about the working of it is that prior to 10.16, prior to this release we are talking about, the current model in CX 10,000 series was switching first. What does it mean? No DSM redirection, no policy defined. If you have this scenario, everything can talk to each other, right? There's no firewall, basically, and there's no redirection. It's doing a general switching or routing capability, right? Everything can talk to each other. You see that here. But if you choose on 10K, you can do DSM redirection with policies in place, and you can define who should talk to whom. That you can do today by defining the policy. The red one, we are saying that you're not talking to them, VM2. So this is today, right? Switching first. With strict firewall mode in 10.16.1006, we are saying it is a firewall first. If you choose, it's not default, right? In that, what happens? Strict firewall is on. Let's say you choose that command which I showed you in the previous slide. Strict firewall is on, and you have a DSM redirection with policies already in place. So it's a brownfield scenario, you see. If you have a DSM already, you have a security policy defining that, look, VM1 should talk to VM3 and not VM2, etc., then it is possible because you can continue to do that. Because what happens is, as soon as you strict on the firewall works well, but if you have a policy in place, that takes precedence over it. That means it does not hamper your network. Remaining, whatever is not redirected, whatever VLANs or VRFs are not redirected, they do not have any policy, then the switch will drop them. The user traffic will be dropped at the switch itself. It won't even go to the DPU. Another scenario would be that you have a strict firewall on and no DSM redirection, no policies. That means everything gets blocked, right? That is a strict firewall thing. And if you have a strict firewall on and there is no DSM redirection, there is no policies, and you have a strict bypass on VRF or VLAN, you can communicate with each other because you are not letting those traffic You're just bypassing those traffic. You're choosing which ones. So you may have VM4 or 5, you still do not want them to be bypassed. Those will be blocked. So you have every control you need with this feature and it's pretty straightforward. It's on a CX, CLI, and REST configurable. Lastly, I just wanted to highlight that the PSM configuration and push to switch setting from the PSM, the redirection one, takes priority and overrides the switch firewall mode or strict bypass settings, which I just explained. If you already have this scenario, right? If you already have DSM redirection and policies in place and you now enable strict firewall on the CX, it does not hamper the redirected traffic. It would still go ahead with the policing. With that, I would want to stop here because I would be providing a demo and a little detailed version of this for everyone's usage in the upcoming weeks. Look forward for the same. In the meanwhile, if you have any queries, do reach out to me. Thank you.